Hi, and welcome to the Boat Princess podcast. My name is Nikki Vo, and I'm your host. I'm a boat owner, a marinas owner, an international conference presenter, and a huge advocate for boating. I'm sharing the stories from every nook of the boating industry with the intention of encouraging more women to join me and for more women to get behind the helm too. I want to share the experience and opportunities of boating, of the boating industry, and I want you to join me as I bring the conversations and answer all the questions you've had. Boating is not just for the glamorous and rich and famous, it's full of beautiful and interesting people making the most of our natural environment and getting out there enjoying the waterways. So, let's let off the lines, take over the helm, and escape to the world of boating. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Boat Princess podcast. I am still at IBEX, and I have happened to nail somebody that's going to be really interesting for you to listen to. Alisdair Martin is the president of the Marine Marketers of America Association. He is a marine industry consultant. He does all sorts of things like strategic marketing and sales for marine industry. And we're going to have a really good chat with him here. So welcome, Alisdair.
Thanks for having me, Nikki.
So tell me, how on earth did your world of boating start? Was it as a child? What's your love of the water? Where does that come from?
Yeah, not at all, really. I came to this industry quite late in life. I did not grow up boating at all. My career back in the UK was working with events. First, I did local press and then national press in sales, mostly media sales. And then I moved to a company that worked with events, big outdoor events, lots of sports and lots of consumer exhibitions.
Give me an example.
Food shows, travel shows, Crufts, Royal Windsor Horse Show, Royal Ascot, all sorts of
the biggies.
Yeah, really good shows.
Yeah.
And it was great. I was very good at that job. I just found it very easy to build good strategy around those events. And an event that I worked with for about 10 years was Southampton and London International Boat Show with the British Marine Federation. So that was my first step into boating world. And in 2010, one of the event organizers that I worked with, a company called Brand Events, who hosted it's actually a foodie exhibition. They had them dotted all around the world. They had Taste of London, Taste of Dubai, there's a Taste of Sydney. They said they wanted to launch a US version of their foodie show. And so would I go along with them and be their official media partner for the show and launch a new business in the US? And I agreed. I convinced my wife that it was a good idea to up sticks and move to Chicago in 2010 to follow this job with a very high-end food festival. And so we sold our house and our cars and everything we owned on eBay. It was very exciting. And about 2 weeks before we were due to move here and live for the rest of our lives, they canceled the show. So we turned up in Chicago in 2010 with a laptop and 2 suitcases and a bundle of cash with no job and no plan.
Wow.
And I quickly scrambled. It was too embarrassing to go straight home. So I thought, let's try and start a business and see what happens. So I harnessed connections with the British Marine Federation, British Marine now, and they introduced me to the NMMA, the National Marine Manufacturers Association, Tom Damrick and Ben Wold at the time. And we quickly, luckily, signed a contract to become the publishing partner for all of NMMA's boat shows, which at the time was 21 boat shows. And that was the start of my little US business. And so
that's a hell of a start.
Yeah, it was good. I had that contract and that paid for me to get a little business, but that was really just me and a phone and a laptop. But it was all of the US's big boat shows. And that's how I ended up in kind of boat show world. I quickly acquired other partners. So I was Formula One's official media partner and some travel shows and food shows and things. But the marine industry It wasn't a love of the water, shamefully, that pulled me to the marine industry. It was the fact that the industry was quite far behind with marketing and modern strategy, and it was relatively easy to bring strategy that I had seen work in other shows into the marine industry and run a successful business. So that's why I ended up sticking in and around boat shows in the marine industry. Quickly won contracts with show management at the time, what is Informa now, to do the Fort Lauderdale Boat Show and other boat shows. But yeah, for 10 or 11 years, that was my gig. I produced all the media around the US's big boat shows.
Goodness. Okay, there's a fair bit to unpack there. So we're going to go back a little bit. First of all, your skill sets are obviously communication and marketing. And so what qualifications did you actually do to get that?
Absolutely nothing.
Oh.
And I think people would be really surprised. I didn't know what I wanted to do at college age. I started college and I dropped out because I wanted to be an author of all things. And I just wasn't enjoying college life. And I started working in local press to begin with. And I found it very easy. So actually, my skill set was just applying a little bit of common sense and being bold enough to address problems. So I went into this local newspaper group. They hired me to be the experts panel person, and I was supposed to work all week on selling advertising to plumbers and electricians and things. But the system was a complete mess. And within a few months, I was able to see exactly how messy that system was, build a much better system. They had people that could advertise weekly or 3 weekly in different sizes and shapes, and I just made it all uniform and transitioned something that used to be a full-time job into a job that took about an hour a week, and then went to the bosses and said, look, I want to roll this out across all of the newspapers in this group. And there was 9 of them, and they said, okay, you're making us a lot of money, go ahead and do that. And then I said, okay, now I want to do that for this other section over here. So I progressed through media planning very quickly, just using good strategy and having the boldness to go through and say, look, I know how to execute a plan that will make this better. And I did exactly the same thing when I moved into these events. Just really building good strategy and being able to execute that strategy well has been my sweet spot that has kind of carried me through my career.
Oh, wow. Okay. And then you mentioned Southampton London Boat Show as part of your world. Mm-hmm. London Boat Show used to be completely inside. It was an incredible setup, wasn't it?
So I knew the history of London Boat Show from 2000 onwards. It moved from Earl's Court in London into the XL Exhibition Centre, which was in a pretty rough area of East London at the time. And they really struggled with that show. They signed a long lease to host the show in this area of London that was set to be rejuvenated, but
didn't rejuvenate quick enough.
No, not quick enough. And it was a 10-day show. So those of us that worked and exhibited there, we're basically looking at 2 weeks staying on site in a location. And even if the show is relatively successful from a money point of view, it is such a slog to go and work at a show in it's not an exciting area. It's not like you can do a lot else in that area. So yeah, I was working with BMF as that show went into decline.
Yeah. And interestingly, I can understand why Southampton's 10 days, because they assume that one weekend's going to be raining and the other weekend potentially isn't. That makes a lot of sense, right? But for the internal show, I wonder why it was 10 days long. That's no Dusseldorf. Imagine doing Dusseldorf 10 days long.
Yeah, and I worked very closely with all of the exhibitors of that show, and the same deal. Yeah. There was a lot of pushback on that. They were happy that it was 2 weekends, 5 more days. Very challenging for the smaller exhibitors who had to run a business outside of the show, because it's different if you are a massive Suzuki engine builder or something and you have a big staff. If you only have 4 staff and you have to take 2 or 3 of them off their day-to-day duties for 2 weeks, that's tough. So yeah, tough show.
So you start working with the NMMA and you're doing 21 shows.
Yep.
That's a pretty big ask. Did you have a team to do that? Was that just you? How did that run?
It grew rapidly. So the strategy, there was obviously a lot more to it than this, but the simple thing that I changed that made a success of that business was this. My contract was to publish the official show guides for the boat shows.
Okay.
And I went in and said that the fundamental problem with the show guide in general is that we don't give it to a consumer who turns up at the show until they arrive on the first day of the show. And by then, it's really too late for any of the people who might want to invest in this vehicle to do something that influences the decision of the buyer who's arrived at the show. So
Also gives the person that's arriving at the show not enough time to plan in advance where they're going to go around
everything.
the show.
Timing's everything. Yeah. So I made a digital platform and I worked with the NMMA to say we're going to make sure that this digital version of the show guide is delivered to the consumer at least a month before they arrive at the show. That was the vision. And then once I had that in place, I went to all of the industry and said, I know that you have a certain amount of dollars assigned to traditional kind of advertising and a show guide. This is a completely different animal. So look at this in a different way. I don't want you to put your traditional ad with the starburst and whatever in it. I want you to create really good video content that will actually help to shape the opinion of someone who has an interest in buying a boat or whatever your product or service happens to be. And I will get it into their hands in the decision-making process. And a lot of people bought into that messaging. And luckily, the distribution worked very well and it was incredibly successful. When I first took over the contract, they were making somewhere between $70,000, $80,000 a year. And within 3 years, we'd turned it into a safe $1 million a year contract just by that small strategic adjustment of let's see where the problem is. Let's find a solution that makes this a useful tool for people who want to sell a $500,000 boat to people. How might we actually influence that consumer's journey to buy the boat? And as soon as you have the results, you can take those around and share them with people and get other people on board.
So when was that, timeline-wise?
2010 was
Okay,
the
so
first year
the
of
boating
shows.
industry at that point wasn't terribly strong on video content and that sort of thing, I'm guessing. Would you agree?
Yes. Most of the manufacturers created video, but it was definitely before the time when people were generating their own video. Typically, they were engaging with agencies to create high-level video.
Which is a serious investment.
Yes, that was pretty common. It was also just about in line with the time that most of the manufacturers were starting to use these kind of like 3D builds of boats that consumers could use. Again, I changed the narrative of the way that we used to sell media in the build up to a show to say, stop looking at this as a place that you can advertise. This is just a pathway that you can use to take those assets that you've created that will actually influence people's boat buying decision and get them into the hands of the people who are coming to the show in a month's time or 2 weeks' time or 3 weeks' time. And then it can actually do its job and influence people. So I was really giving them a delivery vehicle for clever tools and videos and things that they'd already created. And it certainly was not easy to get people to buy into that kind of idea. But again, as soon as the first 5 or 10 did, I could just show the results to everyone and say, look, when you go about this correctly, it can make a difference. So I think in the first year, I had 2 employees. In the second year, I had 5 or 6. I think by the end, we were at about 12 or 13 employees. And our growth had been enormous every year, easily 100% growth every year that we were in business.
That's fantastic.
It's good. It's good, really good business as well. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. And so where did you go from there?
A pandemic, I don't know if you heard about it, but a pandemic came along and it turned my business off like a light switch.
Oh, yeah.
And it was awful.
Yes, events just died completely,
events
didn't
just
they?
turned off. And my
Yes.
entire business model was tied up in outdoor consumer exhibitions like this one. And so when they went away, we had no income. We scrambled for about 6 months and we actually hosted some incredibly successful virtual boat shows. I know everyone was like, oh, virtual boat show. We hosted some really successful virtual boat shows. We did a virtual Palm Beach boat show first, and the feedback that we had from the industry was incredible. There was people that said, given the position that we're all in, this virtual show that you put on saved our business for at least another year, because it was the only way that we could get people who were interested in buying what we sell, like, into the hands of the consumer. But that was still only 3 or 4 shows out of, I don't know how many we had on the books at that time, probably 40 plus shows. So it wasn't sustainable. And ultimately, I had to let all of my staff go and shut the business down, which was awful.
The horrible thing to have to do.
Very, very tough, yeah. And luckily, the entire team that I worked with at that time, we're all still great friends. We meet regularly. Everyone is on great terms. And my staff, who I employed at that time, have all gone on to have great careers. They're earning way more than I could ever pay them. And it's a real source of pride for me that I have maintained these wonderful relationships with staff members who have gone on to really good careers. So that's cool. I appreciate that. I then moved on. I was lucky. I had offers from most of the partners that I had worked with, so I was not going to be out of work. A lot of people who I had been a third party for said, come and do what you did before and do it with us. And NMMA was in Chicago, and NMMA was my first client, and I had a lot of really good friends in the association. So I went and I was the VP of strategy at NMMA for 2 and a bit years. Wonderful company, really good employers, but I found that corporate life did not suit me at all.
Because going from your own business to working for somebody else again is a bit hard, to say the least.
I think exactly that. I think culturally I had become accustomed to I worked with big businesses, but if they chose to work with me, it was because they understood I could go in and find a problem and build a solution and execute it, and I had the autonomy to do that. Working in a bigger corporate sort of environment, I did not have that autonomy, of course. And I think that was a big culture shock for me to say, I can see exactly what the problem is, and I know exactly how to fix it, and these are all the steps I'm going to take to do this. And then it's a much bigger organization, and actually I have to stay in my lane a little bit, and I didn't enjoy that. I was an executor, I was a changer, I wanted to get things done, and I couldn't in that sort of environment. So luckily at the same time, I became the president of the Marine Marketers of America Association, and I had wonderful relationships with most of the big brands, certainly in the US marine industry. So I felt confident enough that I could step away and start doing some consulting work, and so that's what I did. It's been a bit of a ambiguous, unplanned path. I have been incredibly lucky that I've had the luxury of being able to cherry pick partners to work with as a consultant that I believe completely in the mission that they have. I only work with brands who I think do something really good and clever and innovative for our business. But saying that, as a consultant, I don't even have a website. I've never really put myself out there as someone who you could work with. I've just relied on the relationships that I've had with brands that I've built up over the year, and so far, it's working okay.
That's incredible. And I think that is the beauty of having one's own business. You can, to a certain extent, choose the clients you work with. I don't do videos of boats I don't believe in.
Yeah.
I just don't do it.
Yeah.
Because it's not appropriate for me to do so, because I like to be very real for my viewers. But also, it's important for our values, isn't it? That we work with people that have similar values to ours. Otherwise, we feel very uncomfortable. I certainly do. If I'm working with somebody that doesn't have the same values as me, it's tough.
I understand. I agree with you, first of all, but I do think that we are both very spoiled in the fact that we're able to do that. And I don't know whether I'll be able to do that forever. Maybe I won't. Maybe this time next year I'll be scrambling and I'll have to figure something else out. But I recognize that I'm very spoiled in having the opportunity to do that at the moment. And yes, I completely agree. I would definitely say I would work for half the money on projects that I believe in versus double the money in things that I'm not actually passionate about and don't care about. I'm much more motivated, certainly now that I'm an old grumpy man, to be only working on things that I care about.
Yeah. But I think that's somebody like you, somebody like me that has a passion for doing it. If you're not working with those sorts of people, you lose the passion, and then you lose what you're actually capable of achieving.
I think so, but I recognize that 80% of the world do not have that luxury.
No.
They have to work in a job whether they like it or don't like it, and I never forget to be grateful that I have somehow stumbled across this opportunity where I get to do something that I love. Grateful is a very big part of both of our lives. I've absolutely no doubt of that. Yeah. You obviously have a huge passion for the boating industry. You're sharing a lot of your knowledge. Somebody actually mentioned to me also that you do a bit of mentoring within the industry as well.
Can you share with us your sort of contribution to industry and why you do that?
Selfish, it is similar to the answer that we gave before. I feel very acutely that there are different types of work. There is the type of work that you know you have to do, but it drains your energy as you do it. And then there are types of work, and I'm sure this is true for everyone, that you work really hard. You do 14-hour days and you don't give yourself a break, and it's really hard work, but it fills you up with energy as you do it. And I think that is the best way that I can describe the work that I do in things like mentorship, or even in the running of this Marine Marketers of America. It's exactly the type of work that fills me up with energy. I can put 8 hours into a MMA project that's all about bringing our community together and building good relationships and helping people to elevate their brands and things, and I do not get tired of it. It just absolutely energizes me and fills up my sort of passion bucket. Then I have to send out the invoices, and I'll do it for half an hour, and I hate every second of it.
You sound like me.
I can't do it. I just, that work drains me. And so again, I've had the luxury of being able to do work that I find very energizing, and that's exactly where mentorship and all things MMA fit in.
We had a great session at IBEX this morning. You were the moderator for a fantastic panel of industry specialists in marketing in their particular brands. Where do you think the boating industry needs to work on in marketing terms? I know that's a big question, but maybe we can explore that a little bit with you.
Yeah, it is a big question, and it's very broad, and certainly over the last few years it's been a high level topic for people to talk about, and everybody has their 2 cents on it. So I don't know exactly where to start, but I agree there is an awful lot of work to do. We know that every year that goes by, the average age of a boat buyer gets slightly older. And I think either this year or last year, we hit 60 years old as the average age of a boat buyer for the first time. So at the top end, we have an aging demographic of owners. At the bottom end, we also have this terrible challenge that I feel there isn't enough focus put on, that you shouldn't quote me on these numbers, but I'm pretty confident they're right. 40% of first-time boat buyers sell their boat within the first 5 years of ownership.
Ooh.
So early attrition is a major challenge in boating. We put a lot of focus on attracting the next generation of boaters, as we should, because that is a real problem. But I would love to see a little bit more energy put into the fact that when we do get someone to come on board and try out their entry-level boat, almost half of them, 40%, find that the experience of ownership is not ticking a box for them, and they choose to take their money out of boating and presumably put it into something else, travel or golf or skiing or whatever else they may do. I think that is an area that requires a little bit of focus. And over the last few years with MMA, with NMMA, with all of these industry things I do, I hear an awful lot of talk about those challenges. I think we have a lot of these kind of high-level meetings where people focus on the problem and we understand what that problem is. And then we have people who come along and suggest a solution to the problem, and it's really tough to get adoption and everybody kind of buying into the same messages. As an industry, I think we need what's the word I'm looking for? We need everybody to work together to address some of these challenges, and early attrition is one of the key things. So I saw some data from, I think it was InfoLink and Ipsos in the Discover Boating Leadership Summit that happened here on Monday, saying that one of the major problems that newer boaters have is confidence on the water. And they summarized confidence on the water under the banner of 3 other answers that people gave. But it's a very typical thing that comes up in all of these data aggregator things. I think in the industry, we forget that if you grow up boating all of your life, it's not intimidating to you at all. For someone who has not been on a boat before, like if you and I, the age we are now, if we went out on a boat for the first time, it's about as scary as going on a light aircraft for the first time. You are out on the water in a situation that's dangerous. You don't know what you're doing. we're a little bit exclusive as an industry. We don't really invite people in that kind of way. And that confidence, I think, is a major barrier to either purchase or even just general participation in boating. And we need to get better at understanding. People are intimidated by the thought of going out on a boat. They're intimidated by the idea of owning a boat. People love the idea. I don't think there is a lack of people who are excited about the idea of the freedom and the adventure of boat ownership. That's not what's missing. They love the idea of that. And if you talk to them and you show them videos of these aspirational trips they could take if they just went out and bought a boat, I think everybody gets excited by that. But they're intimidated because it's a hard thing to do if you haven't grown up doing it. And you need some hand-holding there.
Yeah. As a former broker myself, I sold boats for 7 years.
Yeah.
I always used to say, okay, get some professional lessons and do not take your family out on that until you're totally confident with driving that boat. Because if you take your family out first time, you've never driven it, they will never go on again.
Yes,
right?
Exactly that.
So I think that's a really important point. And therefore, perhaps it's boat brands looking at continuous training. And
lots of things.
As part of the purchase price, even with professionals taking them out and training them.
Some of them do that now, which is good. But I think the fundamental thing is recognition of it. I think it's not, that issue isn't talked about enough. Once they recognize, oh, people aren't buying boats because they're a little bit intimidated by boat ownership, and people who do buy boats are having problems on those boats, and that's leaving them to exit boating, I think that will help to, it's not going to solve the problem. It's one of a myriad of things that we need to do to make things better, but it's a pretty easy one. I'll plug one of the partners that I work with, CETO, On Water Assistance, and they have created a program now that allows manufacturers to include with the sale of the boats either a year of On Water Assistance membership or a 6-month covered program where it's a very heavily incentivized program and it doesn't cost them anything at all. That strategy, I think, is brilliant. That will make a 1% difference to that early attrition, because having an on-water assistance partner who addresses some of the direct problems that lead people to leave boating when they're new at this is brilliant. You run out of gas, okay, you just press your little CETO button, someone will solve it. If you run aground, if a battery dies or something, having someone who can come out and solve that problem for you just will keep boaters on the water.
It does for car owners, doesn't it? A lot of the car manufacturers give you roadside assistance for a year at least.
Absolutely.
With the purchase, don't they? So that's a very similar program,
and it is,
makes
but
a
it's
huge
even
amount
more
of sense.
intimidating on the water. It's 10 times more intimidating because you can't call your mum to come and pick you up if you run out of gas and you weren't expecting it.
Yeah.
The auto industry recognized that was a pretty easy, we'll address this. It's the size of the problem in the car industry is 1/100th of what it is in marine.
Exactly. And so do you think that boating will also follow the pattern that the car industry has with warranty scenarios then? Because I think that's another area which is a bit daunting for ownership of boats, in not really understanding the maintenance and the requirements of taking care of a boat. I noticed one of the brands at Southampton Boat Show had exactly that. They'd done this program of 5-year warranty plus servicing at a fixed rate for the next year or even longer than that. Do you think boat brands will start to follow that pattern? And should they follow that pattern?
Yes, I do. There are certainly people who are far more educated than I am to talk to this issue. And I also think it's sector by sector, the breadth of the industry. There are people that are selling $1 million boats and there are people that are selling $8,000 personal watercraft. And it's a slightly different solution for each sector of the industry. But broadly speaking, I've heard people who know more than me say exactly that. I heard Anya from Brunswick, who came from one of the big car manufacturers, and I was speaking to her at a panel session and said, what if you could take one thing from the auto industry and bring it into the marine industry with the benefit of your wisdom and experience of now working in both, what would it be? And that was exactly her answer. Because why would service after the sale just not be considered an important factor? It's the same deal. It's harder in a boat than it is in a car. And I would trust her. She knows more than I do.
Okay, so let's go back to that marketing question, but be a bit more specific with it. I know some boating industry, and I guess it's because a lot of the people working in the boating industry are mature, look at social media and a little bit scared of it, a little bit unknown of what to do with it.
Yeah.
How do you think we can change their mindset on that? Because I think it does need to be changed. Would you agree with me on that?
Strongly. So let's unpack why is that change not happening in the marine industry when we clearly see it happening in most other comparable industries to ours. My opinion on it is that the marine industry is slow to adopt in all sorts of ways, but a lot of the reason for it is that the leadership teams in marine industry brands are very static. It's the same leaders now that were in place 10 years ago, and in a lot of cases 20 years ago.
That's a very good point.
If you look across to travel industry, it is not that. The C-suite in those industries changes hands much more rapidly than it does in the marine industry. And so a new team comes in, and as soon as a new team comes in, it's just human nature. They trash everything the team before them did, and they said, we're going to change and improve and innovate, and we're going to change everything. So it's pros and cons. It's great that we have this continuity in the marine industry because there's a lot of big family-owned businesses, and they have much better culture throughout their businesses, and the teams have stayed the same for a long time. It's not a very transitional industry at the top level. But one of the negatives to that is that we don't see a lot of innovation. What I've seen is a lot of mid-level management come in, and they want to be change agents. They want to come in and say, hey, we are going to focus on influencer marketing, and we're going to focus on all these new strategies that we see working elsewhere. And they take it to senior leadership, and senior leadership doesn't say no, because they know that no is the wrong answer. They say yes, and they say all the right words, but they are still putting dollars, for example, into print advertising campaigns. They'll just trim a little bit off and say, this small purse over here is using this example for influencer marketing. And actually, that's not what's happening in other industries. It's very hard if you are the CMO of a mainstream marine industry brand and you've been doing something the same way for 20 years to suddenly turn it on its head and do something different. It takes a lot of boldness. Very often you're talking about new innovations in marketing that the decision maker at the brand hasn't grown up with, and they're not comfortable. They don't have hands-on experience. They've been in a full leadership role with people reporting to them for a while. So they're less comfortable with some of these kind of new innovations and new strategies that people can use. And it just makes the decision a lot harder. And I think that's really what's at the root cause of it. Now, having said that, if you go and speak to them, they will all tell you the right answer. They will all say, we're all about whatever the new thing is. But when someone comes to them and says, okay, then I'm an influencer, I could work with you if you would switch this investment from something that's a bit dated to this one over here that's modern, and I think it can change the world for you, they probably won't do it.
Yeah. What's interesting for the boating industry is they've actually got two completely different markets that they've got to cater to, right? And that print space actually suits their current customer base. That I think the print space is still very valid for most boat owners, because we've just said the average age is 60. Yeah. But if they want to attract the next ownership, they need to go into those different spaces because they're not reading the print. So they've kind of got to go a bit two ways, haven't they? It's
an impossible decision. If you are the CRO of a mainstream industry brand and you know that your lowest hanging fruit is a 60-year-old white male and you're under pressure to produce results, are you really going to take off your most successful tool? You can see it working, even if that tool is direct mail, which is still the best tool for some of these companies that sell boats.
Yeah.
Are you really going to take the dollars away from that and put it into something that is unproven? It's not an easy decision, that's for sure.
Yep.
I've, again, been very lucky that I have been on the cutting edge of some of those innovations in my work. When I created my digital pre-show platform, that was something that people did not have a budget for. They'd never really considered the idea of, could we use this audience pre-show? It's not on our budget anywhere for this type of media. And as I said, probably 19 out of 20 liked the idea but did not put money into it. but the ones that did were incredibly successful with it. Yeah, it's a tough decision.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a really interesting space. And I know if you talk to a lot of people in the boating industry and say TikTok, they sort of shiver in front of you, don't they?
Yeah.
And say, no, I can't do that. But I know, as an example, Josie from Eden Craft in Melbourne, she did some videos on TikTok, and the teenage sons of the guys that could buy the boats and the girls that could buy the boats were hassling their mum or dad to say, I want to buy this boat that I've seen on TikTok.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how there is avenues there, but that we're potentially not exploring at this point, that we can potentially get into.
I think it's huge, and I almost want to call you out a little bit on the idea that TikTok is reaching an audience of children, because I think if you look at the data now, it's not a route to the buyer through their children. Their decision of what boat to buy is informed by content that they consume on social media. It just is.
Yes.
It's not just 14-year-olds, doing silly dances. It's all of us.
Well, it's changed recently, hasn't it? It used to be just the dancers and the 14-year-olds, but now it's just like Facebook went to a completely different demographic.
Yep.
And is almost unpopular now. Other media forms have changed, haven't they?
Absolutely. The TV, I can't remember the last time that I watched advertising on TV. For people of our generation, we grew up knowing that if you wanted to watch a movie, you sometimes have to sit through an advert, and it was acceptable in your life that you would sit and watch advertising. There are 30-year-olds now who have never seen an advert. They just don't do it. They watch Netflix for TV, and if they open a YouTube video and a 5-second ad comes up, they're counting down the seconds. 3, 2, 1, and get out of my way, because I don't want to be force-fed advertising. And as we talk about how we go about attracting the next generation of boat buyers, we can't think about people of our age. We have to really think, if they don't watch advertising on TV, what are they consuming? Like, how do we reach them to get them excited about the product or service that we want to offer? And it's changing. It's changing all the time.
Yeah. Have you had some recent programs that you've done, strategics, systems you've put together for a particular brand? You don't need to mention the brand, but you've really seen a change and result for them you can give us an example of?
That's a really good question. There's quite a few. I would probably say the one that springs to mind is Savvy Navi. Do you know Savvy Navi?
I know of them.
Yeah, they're basically Google Maps for boats. So it's an app, a subscription app, and the general idea is not dissimilar to the car industry in the 90s. There was a time in car ownership where every car was built with just satellite navigation, an inbuilt satellite navigation system. And then, of course, as the technology developed over time, it became an awful lot more convenient to do your route planning on your phone, even if you had the big blocky thing in it, because your phone is much more capable of getting quick updates and more user-friendly, and you can plan from home what you're going to do.
Plus, Porsche wanted to charge you $3,500 for the update.
That's a factor as well, yeah. All of those things, the convenience of doing it on your phone for a multitude of different reasons is really what drove consumers to say, I'm just not going to use that big blocky thing now. Now I'm just going to do it on my phone. I want to be able to plan from home, for example. The pitch is basically that the same thing will happen in boating. It'll just take longer to happen. People, if they're planning a weekend trip, they don't want to wait until they get on the boat to start building kind of a plan. But how do you deliver that messaging to the marketplace when you know, for example, that there's a lot of deals cut with electronics companies, they make money in the boat sales process, and how do you create consumer demand for the use of a product like that? And they had a really successful influencer campaign with a company called VizSense, who just did a really good job. They just found some very good influencers. They created good content that actually told the story. It wasn't very salesy. It was just showing how this product is used day to day. And I think that was a really good example that the rest of the industry could pay attention to and say, they just used a different tool to tell the story. We're all trying to do the same thing, all of these brands. They're all just trying to get their 30 seconds of attention so they can say, hey, here's the benefits of what we're doing. But those two companies, Savvy Navi and VizSense, did a really good kind of cooperative partnership, and it was very successful. It reached a lot of people, and I've seen people around this show who know them from that campaign that they did. So,
interesting.
Same, influencers.
What do you think of influencer marketing? What is your opinion of it?
Again, there are probably people who are more expert than I am, but I would say that it's in kind of transition now. I think as little as 5 years ago, it was a very useful marketing tool if you sold a mass consumption product, which is why things like makeup work incredibly well through influencers. If you are not mass, then it just takes a lot more work to make it successful, right? The Discover Boating Leadership Summit on Monday, we had a guy who was, I think, CMO for McDonald's. Okay, he said 80% of the country has McDonald's every certain period. So great. Using influencers to sell a product that everybody has access to is very easy. If you're selling a particular type of boat, then you know that 97.8% of the country is not a prospect for your product. And that means you can't just go and grab a broad influencer. You have to find micro influencers who specifically target the potential customers for your specific product. And that's a heavy lift. That is a completely different prospect to lipstick. Half the population is going to wear it.
Yeah.
But I do think it's absolutely critical moving forward that the industry harnesses that opportunity to reach people, because those people who we would like to see buying boats, they are consuming content, for example, about travel. If you go on your Instagram or TikTok or whatever now, you will see inspirational travel videos all the time. We work in one of the most aspirational industries in the world. You can capture incredible content on a boat, lifestyle, sunsets, fun with family, all those sorts of things. And it's just a much heavier lift, I think, for us to find audiences. I'm absolutely expecting that we will see specialist agencies crop up and blow up over the next few years who exclusively target our industry.
Interesting. Can we delve into boat shows for a minute?
Sure.
Yeah? What do you think the future of boat shows is? Another big question.
Really good question. Yeah, it's a good subject for me to talk about as well, because I've been so closely involved with so many shows. There's not many shows, the big shows, that I haven't had some kind of experience with. Having worked closely with Informa, worked for NMMA, was a partner of all the big show producers over here. It's definitely a transitional time for shows, no doubt. The days of consumers turning up at a show without much of an idea of what they want to buy, meandering around the booths and making their buying decision on the day are dead and buried. That's not the way that consumers buy products anymore. Boat show organizers and exhibitors need to come to terms with the fact that 90% of that customer's journey to buy a boat is already done by the time they arrive at a boat show. If you're actually a buyer, if you're not just there for a nice day out and you're a tire kicker, if you're actually there to buy a boat, you will have been on websites, you'll have searched, you'll have watched videos, you'll have seen reviews, you'll have done a little 3D tour of the boat. And then you've got to think, if 90% of the journey to buy that boat has already been done, what's the point? Why do you even go to a show? People still go to boat shows in vast numbers because the last 10% of the journey to buy a boat can only happen in person. It's not like buying a pair of trainers. You are not going to commit to buying a boat. I don't think we'll ever really see a Carvana for 90% of boats out there. It just won't happen because people will need to see it in the flesh before they can go that last 10%. And so the focus of the time and energy that exhibitors at boat shows spend on their sort of activations there has to change. I know so many of them who still measure the success of their investment in a boat show by the number of leads that they pick up. We spent $27,000 on this show. We need 100 names and phone numbers. Stop doing that. That's ridiculous. That's from 10 years ago. Stop doing it. People are resistant to give that information away.
They really
and they
are.
are not, they're buying decision is not informed by that stuff anymore. The buy doesn't happen in that way anymore. They do all of their research before. They're only coming to do the last 10% with you. I actually think the most comparable buying journey is the journey to buy a house, where you wouldn't dream of, if you were looking to buy a house now, going out with no plan and just going from house to house to house to see what kind of fit. You know, before you ever go and see a house in person, that it matches your budget, that it has the right number of bedrooms, that it's the school district. You've definitely done a virtual tour of every room of that house. All of those things must happen before you ever go and see it in person. So you will dismiss, if you were looking to buy, probably for you, an $8 million mansion in Beverly Hills, then you have done all of that before you ever go and see a house.
You're going on my shoe collection on that, aren't you? Yeah.
You would dismiss hundreds and hundreds of houses that you know you will never go and see in person. But also, just like with a boat, you will not buy it online. You wouldn't dream of that. You go to see it in the flesh and to have that final experience. And then sometimes you'll go and see a house that you saw online and you'll be like, I wouldn't dream of living here. This is awful. Sometimes you'll go in and you'll be like, this is the one. Yeah. That's the experience that exhibitors at a boat show need to provide to their customer. Your job is not to collect leads anymore. It's to know that you are in the last 10% of that customer's journey to buy a boat. You want them to walk in and go, I can see days out with my kids on this boat. I can sit down and relax. I can picture myself out on the water in this boat. I've got the feels for this one. I'm going to dismiss those other 4 that were on my short list. This is the one. That's how it works. One of the big challenges, of course, is that during the pandemic, people started to kind of cotton on to that fact. When the boat shows shut down, a lot of the manufacturers and even some of the bigger dealer groups started putting those dollars that were assigned to boat shows into their own private events, where they don't have 100,000 people out. They actually only have 100 people out. But they know that 60 of those are serious possible buyers, and they give them a much more kind of concierge service, and their conversion rate is significantly higher. That's some of the challenge for shows. It's not dissimilar to what we talk about with leadership groups in boat manufacturers. Boat show organizers also need to recognize the sense of purpose that people come to a boat show has definitely changed over the last few years, and we need to provide our exhibitors with all of the tools to help them be successful in converting interested people into actual quantifiable sales so that they can keep charging money and making shows work.
It's interesting, there was mention earlier in a presentation about that potentially the big boat shows might not be the answer anymore and that more regional boat shows would be appropriate. Do you think that is a move that might happen in the future?
Different strokes for different folks. Yeah. I think there are people who they could go to their local dealership and they could see a handful of boats from a handful of brands that interest them, and that will be enough for them. They don't need to see every boat in the market. They're happy to just kind of see these 5. There are people who want to go and be around 90,000 other people, and they want to be able to see not just every boat brand, but every model of every boat brand, and they wouldn't be happy going to the smaller regional show.
So you think there's room for both?
I hope there's room for both. I think it will. Yeah, again, it's
because even that concept of the private show for the private clients, those clients have to be known by that brand to get them there, don't they? Whereas the big boat shows brings in potential people that nobody knows.
Yeah.
They're just suddenly arriving in a show and putting a deposit on a Viking and nobody even knew they were coming in, right? Again, there seems to be room for both of those spaces. Maybe the big boat show is the teaser and then the private event is the closer, as it were.
Yes, I think that's the case. And I think, frankly, the industry needs big boat shows for so many reasons. Like, the fundamental thing is that we pull together 100,000 people who are all under one umbrella. I have an interest in something in boating world, and now I'm giving my effort and my energy and my travel time and spending some money to come and be under that umbrella for a while. And what we have to get really good at is serving them with things that are interesting to them. And I think that's one of the challenges. There's so many of these shows, especially the indoor shows. It's really tough to make it fun. In my occupation as working with shows. I've been to so many different industry events, and some of them I have absolutely no interest in the product or service that is the core of the exhibition I'm at, and I have a wonderful time. I have a great day out. I've been to boat shows where if you're not interested in buying a boat, right? If you're interested in buying a boat, okay, then it's terribly exciting because you're going to leave with something, you're going to buy something. But some of these shows, you go to them, and if you're not buying a boat, it's dull as hell. You just wander around, there's nothing to do, there's no experience, you're not going to have fun. I've been in a lot of meetings about how we elevate that experience. And I think it is a little bit of an industry cultural problem. You take even this show, a lot of the manufacturers here manufacture products for boats, but also RVs and outdoor stuff, power sports and things. If you go to a power sports show, even a trade, B2B kind of style trade show, it's thrice as exciting. It's just inbuilt into the culture of going to a travel show or a power sports show that you have a duty as an exhibitor to create an experiential moment for everyone who comes by your booth. And these companies go from show, and if they're doing power sports, they know they bring the toys, they bring the fun, they bring the experience and the lights, whatever makes it fun. They come into the boat sector and they're just like, yeah, we're just standard 10 by 10, bit of signage. We'll just kind of stand and look at people. It's something that needs to change in our culture.
I agree. And it's potentially bringing in those other revenue spends, isn't it? Whether it's travel, whether it's RVs, whether it's outdoor sports, whatever it is, potentially collaborating with some of those to create different experiences available as well.
Yeah, in some situations that absolutely could work.
Yeah. It's interesting, having just attended Southampton Boat Show, I think that's potentially one of the most I've ever seen that takes that sort of approach. There was a lot of activity going on. There was on-the-water demonstrations of the jet ski champion and sailing going on out there, and then there was stages where there was different presenters talking about all sorts of different things about boating. There was the wooden boat demos going on. There was live music near the food trucks. There was a lot going on in that show, which wasn't just about boating. It was very closely related, but activity and things going on for people to actually have a good day out, as well as just see some boats.
I agree. I think there is a little bit more emphasis put on it at those shows. And I think it helps that they've seen success with it. I remember at London Boat Show, they used to host the World Windsurfing Championships indoor in a custom-built pool with great big air blowers blowing on these windsurfers.
No way.
Incredible. And you think there was definitely some boaty people who took the view that these aren't my customers. What are you doing? Like, why are you putting energy into hosting the World Windsurfing Championships at the London Boat Show? It's a different demographic. These are surfy, athletic 22-year-old dudes. They're not a customer for my product. But people that came to the London Boat Show because their whatever, let's be stereotypical and say husband was interested in buying a boat, but the wife and the 20-year-old sons didn't care at all about the boats. They were thrilled with the World Windsurfing Championships. There was energy, there was a real vibe to it, and a whole different kind of demographic of people were attending the show. And maybe some of those 20-year-olds got the bug. Maybe they got excited about something that they saw that they didn't think was going to interest them. They were interested in the world windsurfing, but they caught the bug and they decided to go on a sunsail vacation, and then they became a boater, and now they own 3 boats. That sort of stuff, like, it does take a bit of an investment of time and trust in the process. It's not instant gratification kind of return, but you don't see a lot of it out here at these US shows. I think Southampton has been pretty good for it. Some of the other European shows do a really good job with that, but there's definitely potential for it, I think, especially as there's such focus now on bringing the next generation of boater in.
Yeah. So this was a really good conversation. Thank you so much for being here.
I waffled a lot.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. You were fantastic. You were fantastic. And you speak at a speed that fits a lot in. So that's
too
awesome.
much coffee. It's day 3 for me.
So let's do a huge plug for your company and tell everybody exactly what you do and how they can get in touch with you.
Oh man, this is a tough one because so my company doesn't have a proper name. It's AM Consulting, and I don't really know what I do. I apply common sense and I build strategy, and I'm very good at creating the good sort of terms for business. I'm awful to work with. I don't play well in a team. What?
Brutally honest.
Oh, yeah. AM Consulting, look me up. And also, if we're doing plugs, we should do a plug for Marine Marketers of America, which is my volunteer thing, but it's something I'm very passionate about. That is a really powerful group of, we say 3,000, but I think only 2,000 are actually active. 2,000 members who are US Marine marketing folks. And they're typically directors, VPs, CMOs of mainstream industry brands. And we do some really good, we're a small association. We're not a wealthy association. Membership is peanuts. It's $150 a year for a personal membership or $750 a year for a corporate membership. But we host really fun, exciting, vibrant networking parties. We have the Neptune Awards, which is
the inspiration for my husband's trident.
There you go.
Isn't it?
Exactly that.
Yeah.
So see how many lives we touch? We are the Golden Globes of the marine industry, and I've really made an effort with that event in particular. I think a lot of the networking events that have been around in the marine industry have been pretty stale, and we want to do the opposite of stale. We want to be sexy and fun and glamorous, and that's what that event is. Yes, plug. MMA, come join, be a member, and maybe we can work together as well in some capacity. I don't know.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, to explain to the listeners, my husband was given as a parting gift from his volunteer presidential role for Icomia an enormous trident, which weighs about 20 kilos.
If you can't picture it, it's a weapon of war. It's a proper weapon of war.
And it's perched in our lounge room now. And it's actually inspired by Alisdair. So there you go.
There we go.
Alisdair, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Everyone, I hope you've enjoyed that. Get in touch with Alisdair Martin. And yes, maybe you can work together. Maybe you can join his association and become part of that amazing networking group. We'll see you on the water soon. Hi everyone, thought I'd just jump in here and say thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I really appreciate you doing so. Please share it with your friends, tell people about it, and give us a review. We'd really appreciate a review. We'd like to know what you'd like to hear about as well. You can connect with us on LinkedIn, Nikki Vo, the Boat Princess, and Instagram at the Boat Princess. If you'd like to get involved in some of our events, then contact us at info@theboatprincess.com or simply sign up for our newsletter at theboatprincess.com. You take care. We'll see you on the water soon. It's lovely to have you here. We appreciate you. The Boat Princess podcast is hosted by Nikki Vo, produced by the Boat Princess Media, and available anywhere you get your podcast.